and a very good afternoon to you, to every one of you all. You know, William Wordsworth once said, "Behold a single in the field, yon solitary highland lass, reaping and singing by herself, stop here or gently pass." Unfortunately, in today's day and age, technology no longer falls in that realm where someone can tell us, either you stop and gently see it or just pass by. We actually have to get into the thick of things and ensure that somewhere or somehow we are well covered and we are kind of running with our businesses to ensure that whatever this technology throws at us, we take it and we take more of that than what we anticipated when we started this journey. Now, the topic says CFO's technology agenda. Is it actually CFO's technology agenda, or is it the business's agenda in today's day and age? I think it's technology is business survival. So it's more like a CEO's agenda, but because the CFO kind of has that hat where whatever the CEO wants, he is the executor as being the business partner, it becomes his agenda. But can he do it alone? Those are the questions that we'll deliberate upon. Can he do it alone? Do we want a team? What is the org structure? How will we do it? Will we work with functions? Will we go ahead and look at each processes for our own function or across the business? Then, obviously, what's in it for us? So, does it mean that finance will also digitize? What will be the impact of digitization of finance? And lastly, we'll try to wrap up with some examples of the products that have been used to digitize finance. So, actually it reminds me, a 2020 Gartner report actually listed out 3 finance priorities. It says organization, technology, and analytics. Even Deloitte report listed out that transactions in 2025 will be touchless. The role of finance will change dramatically. It'll be more insights. Finance is real time. It's no longer reporting, or will be real time and no longer reporting. Self-service will become the norm. Operating models will be very, very different. It'll be through robos and algorithms. ERP will be no longer the same. It'll be more like microservices, and proliferation of data will happen. So what we have just enunciated and what these 2 big organizations also forecast, there is some synergy between what we are talking. So hopefully on that good note, may I request Ramnik to please share with us his views and experience on how we can deliver a finance org which really works for technology as an agenda. Ramnik.
Thanks, Hemant. You're starting with that whether you can escape technology or not. That's a good. You talked about that. So if you start, if I start looking at my, 20 years back. So when I started my career and how the finance functions have evolved over the period of time, it has been drastically changed. So what exactly happens that, the role of finance function has changed from the scorekeeper, you call it the gatekeepers, or maybe the number cruncher, to, it has evolved over a period of times to now, it's a different, scale, which you rightly mentioned about that, whether it is a CEO agenda or whether it is, we have to drive the agility in the business, so that, and wearing number of hats by the CFOs. The finance functions, are now moved from the transactional, the way they are doing the transaction activities now to steering the business. This is what exactly the difference between what exactly has happened over a period of time. And that is possible, of course, because of the 2 things which I talk about that. It is because of the standardization of the processes, which we set it right. So it is not only the finance function, the process has been standardized, but it's a cross-functional. So whether it is, talking to the customer sides, whether we're talking from the procurement side, so that whether we are talking from the production side, or whether from talking to any stage where there is an interface. So the things has been got standardized over the period of time. That the things we move from the technology pieces. Yes. So many organizations are at a different stage of the technology. So if I talk about to the small manufacturing company, so if I look at today's scenarios, COVID also has taught us many things. So if I talk about, a very big organization which has, moved to the, not the full maturity level. So, but it at the, middle of the age. So where they have done transitions in terms from the transactional activities, which they might have set up the shared service centers. So they move these transactions to that shared service centers. And the finance function is focusing on the core business. When I say core business, they are helping the CEOs in terms of taking the business decisions. When I talk about the business decisions, it means that you are looking at the data. You don't look at the past data now. So nobody, no CEO wants that you should look at the past data. Rather, the CEO wants us to, explore and predict the data for the future, so that when you will take the business decision, and it's a VUCA world. So whatever we take the decision, we are not sure that how the situation will go there. So nobody is now talk or thought of COVID situation. But if you see that, so after 1 year, this COVID situation, so every business faced a different situation. So they came out of that situation because those in a different fashion, because some were struggling because they were not ready with the digitalization at their organization, and those who are at the digitalization stage, they have got easy pass from that angle. When I say that, for example, I take you the example that, so where we have put up the shared service centers. So if you have to get your invoice payment to the vendors during this crisis situation, so they were not worried about that. Why? Because their system was already in place in terms of the scannings happenings across the locations. And or some organization may go into the robotic processes also, so that things got processed and the things get payments also. Similarly, things happens from the receivable side also. So this is what exactly the technology helps us over the period of times, and different industries follow the different stages to reach to the maturity level. But yes, if I talk about how the future of the finance will be there, to be very honest, which you rightly mentioned about the different, Deloitte reports and the Gartner reports, that yes, by 2025, so the more finance function will be on the value added services. Why I'm saying value added services? Because by the time all the transaction activities, whether it's a small or medium or the large organization, will be maturing to that stage. So they will be either putting up the COE, Center of Excellence, or either they will be putting up the shared service center. So all these transactional activities move from the core function, and the major function is on the strategic planning, which is helping the business to take the decisions. So this is what exactly the future of finance function will be there. So where you will be more focus is, because now nobody talks about the tax compliances. When we were just listening to Archit, so he was talking about the technology which he's brought into the system, and which is helping so many CFOs and the chartered accountants in terms of the compliance part. Nobody's worried about it. On monthly basis, I have to file GSTR 1 and do the reconciliation, and how much credit is pending in terms of cash flow perspective. Now is that I should take the strategic decision. How should I do my tax planning from the business perspective? How I can add the value, because all these things has been moved to the shared service center and all that perspective. So this is what the transition is happening. And the future, if I talk about that, it's more, you rightly mentioned about, it's more the algorithm. So if I look at down the year, 10 year down the year, so it may be possible that if CEO want to understand the geography of the business, so he may be using Alexa to ask him in the mornings, so what is the liquidity positions in the organizations, and how I look at the geography wise, what is the sales happened there, maybe the product wise, and the EBITDA which I generated from the sales. So this is what the future of the finance will be there, and more will be more on terms of using more AIs as well as the analytics. So even not only the CFOs, if you look at the government side also, which Arthur was mentioning in the previous panel discussion. So now government is also focusing more on the AI. Now government is not worried about how many EVA bill are generated, because at a click of button every month government knows how many EVA bill has been generated. Now they are met. So all these things has been transactional, which has been moved out of that non-core area, but focus is more on the how they increase the tax percentage so that they can reduce their fiscal debt. So they do that planning from that perspective. So similarly from the business side also, So in my experience also, other panelists is also there, they will also share their experience. But this is what the transition has happened over a period of time from traditional role to, steering the business. So now I will say the finance function or maybe the CFO becomes the co-pilot with the CEO. So I will normally take the example that, so earlier we used to, going for the Airbus, which have a big, plane where you have an air hostess with the passengers there. So now I will say we are, flying a Bombardier, not the Bombardier. So now we are doing the ATR. Why I'm saying ATR? Because all transaction activity has been moved to the shared service centers from many businesses. And we are focusing on the value added through more on the AI and the robotic process. Yeah, Hemant.
So thank you, Ramnik, for this very insightful structure. Now, I'm actually worried, possibly much like you all, that since I have been downgraded from a pilot of a 737 to a ATR pilot, from carrying 300 plus passengers, now I'm looking at carrying maybe 100, 120. It's kind of doesn't it upset all of us?
So yeah, Hemant, you truly said it. So when I see in my career, because when I see this transformation was happening that, so when I was having a team which was going to the shared service center, so, this is what the change management happens, so because the
that's
team
a beautiful point. Let me come to Deepak. Deepak, with this small sized team now that you will manage, and the fact that you have been demoted by Ramnik, all of us have been demoted by Ramnik, as he mentioned just now. Can you tell us, can you spare someone from your team to be the technology champion to deliver 2025 for the finance function? Over to you, Deepak.
Yeah, thanks, Hemant, and thanks, Ramnik, for your insightful, obviously, information which you provided. So I have a couple of things, Hemant. One is that the answer is yes, obviously, and I'll tell you, I'll just give you some kind of a background before I get into and dwell on the question which you asked. It may be slightly more longish answer, but nevertheless, I think, it makes sense. I will start from, again, from the 380s and not the ATRs, and then, I'll come to the levels, what he's talking about. Well, yes, you are absolutely right. All the businesses actually have seen that, the companies have to, or the CFO function has to actually move from just doing a transaction to actually an analysis mode. So that is number one. And what it actually has done is that, all the manual transactions which were being done, the repetitive, transactions which were done, so those have been moved, we know that, it has moved to shared services in most of the companies. The decision making which, the CFO has to do or the business have to do, you have to actually be productive in all the time which you have to do. When I started my career, everybody used to have a desktop, and the data was very much actually decentralized. So a cost sheet or a pricing sheet would be sitting in one laptop or a desktop, and which is not actually available to anybody else. Now what has happened is that, with the technology coming into picture, obviously the biggest benefit which everybody gets it, and is that, the data is actually available. The same data is available to everybody. The second thing is the accuracy of the data, the reach of the data, and the decision making has become very, very quick. That is number one. The second thing is that it has actually helped reduction of the cost, because CFO being the business partner role, obviously, one of the things which, the CFO drives in the organization, and his organization drives, is the productivity improvement, not just for finance function, but for all the functions. And obviously, getting the integrity and compliances, that is one of the critical roles, if I were to say, right to operate. So that happens. So what at Tata AutoComp we did was that we basically started moving, obviously adapting technology almost, I would say, almost 4 to 5 years back in a very, very big way. And just getting to people work on the actual decision making as opposed to transaction. So, the transaction part was moved to the shared services, and the decision making or the analysis was actually done by the business. Dashboards were built in because we work on S/4HANA. So, we are currently working on the analytics part. And we are also working on Industry 4. So what it does is that, previously, if I were to get a labor efficiency machine or a capacity utilization information from the shop floor, what it used to do, and this is actually true for even your companies like services companies as well, Infosys or TCS, wherein they actually really compute the productivity of the people. So what they do is that the machines are actually integrated through Internet of Things. I can actually see this data sitting wherever I am. I do not have to go to the shop floor. I can actually see how the business is actually doing, or how the people are working. We have basically integrated the attendance system. So we have a face recognition system. If the person comes into the factory, you do not have to actually swipe the card. The moment you basically do the face recognition, obviously the person has come in, and obviously we pay the salary and things like that. So coming back to the machines part, I know exactly how much is the productivity and uptime of a particular machine. It also actually helps to understand whether the machine is going to get into a breakdown. And I'll give you a very, very simple example, which I used to work for a company called 𝐓𝐡𝐞, and they manufacture the windmill bearing. And this windmill, if you see, they are actually in a place like nowhere. It will be in the mid of sea, it will be mid of desert and things like that. And these are critical applications. If the machine stops, obviously you have a challenge, because going after the machine is actually conked off, it becomes very challenging, because you have to then do it, and the downtime is very, very high. So all the machines had actually sensors, and we know exactly something were to go wrong, then we will just go and do the preventive maintenance. Say I run a business here in my current organization and we sell batteries. So if you were to go and buy a battery, generally the previous attempt was the person will give you an invoice, they will actually give you a warranty receipt, they will do a stamping and put a date. Now those are all manual. And what happens is that when I actually see from a company perspective, a lot of channel partners, they would basically put a date, even though obviously the date on which the product was sold will be different. So we have actually connected those batteries. We know exactly whenever the sales happens, and we see all the time in iOS devices. The moment you log in through your system, it automatically understands that your warranty starts, and exactly that happens in the battery as well for us. So we are able to do the management. We are able to do the warranty, obviously management very clearly. We are able to do the preventive maintenance based on the data, and this is all because we have actually imbibed technology across. Just to coming back to the core operations, or finance, we basically have got the facility wherein we have integrated our systems with the customer. So if at all the invoice has to be given in, we can actually which is called an OCR, or document management system. You can actually send this documents straight away. It gets automatically populated. Same way, effectively, if I have to give the schedules to the vendors, and receive the invoices from them, we don't have to basically have physical documentation. It also helps for GST, because a lot of automations which of late the companies have been able to force to do it, I would say, was because of the tax. I think the earlier panel did touch upon it, and I do agree with them that huge amount of automation has come in, especially because the governments are also planning to do that. And at the end of the day, how does it actually helps? Effectively it helps. The decision making has become much more faster. The decision making has become far more accurate. previously, I used to close my books, by almost, 60th day after the quarter close. Today, we are ready to close by 15th of the next, the quarter ends, so that is the kind of, in fact, during COVID, I'm sure that all of the companies did actually close their books, and we were able to close our books because we had a lot of technology embedded already, and we were able to close our books normally the way it used to be done. For this year also we have done it exactly, even though the COVID times are actually are there like last year as well, especially Maharashtra, where the COVID is far more this thing. And the biggest benefit which I have seen in technology is that, when you have single instance systems and things like that, you do not have to refer to various databases. You have to just go and just, believe on that. And, you don't have to worry about the history will be lost because all the data is actually there in a single instance. And we are a business of 15 companies. So we have 15 legal entities, and we are able to manage it very, very clearly. Now, Hemant, to your point, whether the CFO has to drive it or, we need somebody else. The answer is yes, it's a mixed bag. I would answer like this, that obviously CFO function actually cuts across all the functions. So without CFO taking charge and obviously being there as a support, the systems generally does not get implemented, because at the end of the day, it boils down to financial controls, it boils down to risk management, it also boils down to the reporting part. So I've seen CFOs actually driving it, but purely from a understanding, what systems we should basically implement, what kind of accounting packages or what kind of systems we should basically get implemented. What I have seen is in a complex organizations like ours, wherein we are multifaceted product and services group, there we basically have a CTO. Obviously, in my company, I'm the CEO, as well as obviously I'm not the CTO, because CTO for me is the technology in the business, not from an accounting system perspective, but I handle the CFO as well as CIO, this thing. But what I have seen is that, the CIO in this case actually works with different stakeholders of the business, which always includes the CFO function. So, if it is related to marketing, the CFO function will get involved. If it is going to be obviously operations, the CFO functions involved, because the kind of commercial sense and the kind of reporting, obviously experience which the CFO function brings in, I don't think so that other functions do bring in. So whether in 2025, whether the CFO would be driving this, the answer is yes. I don't see any problem with that, given that, most of the people have very similar experience and exposure in terms of, system implementation. That is what I would basically, end with. But this is a very, very specific decision by the companies, and different companies may take a different call. Sometimes, if it is a marketing oriented company, maybe the marketing guy or a supply chain guy can basically head that. But many a times I've seen the CIO along obviously with the CFO, they generally have implemented most of the systems, in all the companies wherever I have worked from. Over to you, Hemant.
Thank you, Deepak. So there is a silver lining here. Ramnik showed us the doom, the Paul and the gloom. Deepak is saying, guys, don't worry. Even if the CFO does not drive it, that common link of the CFO will always be there. Now, whether the CFO drives it or not, it's horses for courses. Silver lining, we're still in job. We still have something to do, even in 2025, hopefully. So on that good note, the question that looms then, post what Deepak told us, is how do we integrate? If we are the kind of the common thread across the company, how do we integrate everyone? Who better than Nitin to tell us how we can go ahead and integrate with the CFO, either driving it or being the common thread. Over to you, Nitin.
Hi, thanks, Hemant. Thanks, Ramnik, and thanks, Deepak, for putting in, very important perspectives. So yeah, I agree that CFO is a common link across all the functions. But the hardest part is to set in motion a guidance for the management team to know and really understand that how they can make a right decision by working on the technology or leveraging the technology. So I think the first part is to start with top down, and I'll just add on to what Ramnik and Deepak said, without repeating that. So the first thing is the voice has to be from the top. The management team has to be sold to the idea that yes, digitization and automation is driving us efficient system. Second, it also helps in making better decisions in the system. Also, from this part, we will be more focusing on analytics rather than working on the transaction bit. So I think the voice has to come from the top. So that's one. And while I'm in the process of forming a shared service as of now, and these are all live experiences. So yes, without business process integration and contribution, none of the finance function can be designed. So if we say that finance can work all alone, and they can sit and just by sitting in one place and they can design the entire system for the organization, yes, they can, but that will not entail success. So they have to sell the idea to the entire management team. So it has to come from the CEO or the promoters, and then it has to come down to the level. Now, what role a CFO plays, in while joining this community? I think the best part, with a CFO can play is to act as a catalyst. Uh, in many places I've seen the finance team normally goes out with a baton and says, this is the last date. By this date, you have to submit your papers or your bills, and everything gets closed. We'll close the books by this time. I think we have to take a different approach, while we are going for technology. Uh, I think we have to sit with individual management teams, which is the leadership team, take them into confidence, make them understand what they can get benefit out of it, sit in their shoes, understand their pain, and try to resolve those pain through automation. So I can share a few examples, in individual, functions, I would say. So the first was CEO. Of course, when you're sitting across CEO and you tell him that, boss, you have to spend 1 crore rupee for an additional technology, he says, I'll rather spend on marketing. Why do I need to spend on technologies? And then you have to tell him that, look, the entire management team, the time which they're spending on putting Excel sheets, manual contribution, and looking at 6 different data without making a one single decision. The moment you get a dashboard with a click of button, I think that's the advantage which you get. So you have to sell to individual functions, and that's how we went across selling to the leasing business head, saying that, boss, you don't have to go and fill in your selling cards, all your cold calls, details of CEOs of 625 brands all across 5 malls. You click it and you get the contact details, and you can just dial in from your laptop and you can call them. That's the advantage which business can get. When COVID came, we went to the malls and we said that there are analytics which can help you in analyzing how many people are there in the mall. The government has always been a concern. You always used to get commissioner visits and all, saying that whether the social distancing is getting followed inside the mall or not. And I'll tell you, malls are one of the safest place in today's scenario, because even if you are going in a high street, nobody is controlling you. But you go to a mall, every floor you will find there's a person who will come back to you and say, boss, please put your mask on, or there is no social distancing which is getting followed. So I think this entire thing, analytics helped us in getting those data. And then marketing, looking at, since everybody is sitting at home, malls are not there, not functioning, we took help of marketing team to sell items through WhatsApp. Many of the offline retailers started coming online. Many of the online like the Amazons of the world or Mintras of the world used our malls as independent warehouses, because the stocks were readily available. within 2 kilometers, if you have to deliver the stock, they will just pick up and deliver the stock. So automation, during this COVID helped us a lot. Now, while the malls are starting now, touchless parking, touchless food court, and I'm sure everybody goes to malls today, and we all are concerned about our safety as well as safety of our families as well. So automation at all levels, and how we or the finance function help. At each of the malls, finance team work very closely with the businesses just to make sure that controls, compliances, and processes are all aligned. It's a complex process. It's easier said than done. It took us time, few failures also. We lost, many of the vendors did came up with promises, but we did got some failures during this entire process. But at the end of the day, I would say where we were 1.5 years back and where we are, I think there is a great leap of faith from our side. So answer your question, Hemant, CFO and the finance function has played a huge role in devising this, and it's a curry, it's a chain which brings all the functions together. So I'll just wait, halt here or pause here and hand over to you, Hemant, and while I contribute more during the panel discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Nitin. Good to know. So what we all have taken away, apart from many other points, is that malls are safe. And once they open up or have opened up, we are good to go.
Absolutely.
On that good note, so keeping our safety in the mall is also important. So it means something for us. So the question that looms in at our face is, what's in it for us? So we have all talked of business. What does it mean for the finance function? So can I call upon Amitesh to help us to understand how we can digitize the finance function and what will be the impact of the digitization on the shared services, which I assume largely is run by finance. Amitesh.
Yeah. Thanks, Hemant. And Ramnik, Deepak, and Nitin has already set the stage so well that it's so easier for me to kind of share some of the experience. So look, Hemant, I'll start with, CFO title itself has evolved. If we have to go back 20 years, the most advanced, I would say, title for any accounting was the Chief Accounting Officer. And that's how we have all known that, when you become clear your CA, you're going to be a CAO of a very large company. Some companies still have that, but ultimately we have seen that radical shift of a Chief Accounting Officer transforming into a CFO, which now is being looked up as a business partner to the CEO. And I think Deepak did mention that, how important it is to kind of not only manage the accounting function, but take care of the whole business together hand in hand with the CEO. And, it's something like, CFO nowadays being considered as a first flight officer. Sometimes they have to land the plane as well when, the commander asks you, when the CEO asks you. So I think we are getting into that mode. And I think I believe that, the CFO transition has just started and we'll see a lot of transformation. And in past, we would have seen that how CFOs have transformed into some of the business leadership roles. Now, the biggest question for any CFO is we do see a lot of digitization talks which happens. We have seen a lot of marketing which happens. There's so many organizations who have been coming into this space. But I think the real question is whether the finance org should, or how much should they accelerate their, the digital transformation? And I think this answer is like, all size doesn't fit all, right? Because you have to assess yourself based on your requirement. And the first thing is, being a CFO, you know how much resources you have, how much budget you have for that particular. So selecting the right set of digitization for the finance org becomes a chief responsibility of the CFO. And Deepak mentioned that CTO or CIO can partner with the CFO. And I think if I have to talk about my experience coming in from LinkedIn, we have seen that there was a radical shift of the whole CIO function and the CTO function, not on the product side of the business, but on the technology side, which manages the ERP and the other internal reporting system, gets totally aligned with the CFO, and they were actually reporting to the CFO, so that CFO were driving some of these key decisions. Now, another thing, again, taking an example from LinkedIn, and it is far more important to understand, is that the digitization should be done not only to kind of minimize the manual efforts and minimize the manual errors, which all accounting system which are done on manual basis is, or to reduce the effort and bring efficiency in the team, but we all have learned, especially in the tech companies who I have got some experience with, is providing a customer experience. Now, sometimes we misconstrue as a customer experience, and all finance functions has to kind of adopt this organization skill, is that we consider even the external external parties as a customer. Like, for example, somebody from the sales teams calls up a finance person to know a receivable balance for his clients or his relationships. I think you have to treat him as a customer. Now, at LinkedIn, we developed bots, which, any salesperson can just at the click of a button can know all the receivable balance for their relationships. So I think we all at finance function has to adopt that behavioral change within ourselves first, and start treating everyone who we serve, right from the CEO to the other business partners or to the cross-functional people, to start treating them as customers and start enhancing the customer experience. So now when we raise this question, how much to digitize and what to digitize, I think the first parameter should be, by digitizing this, how are we enhancing the customer experience, whether it is an internal customer or whether it is an external customer. Now, again, taking a cue from LinkedIn, all CFOs or the CEOs would like to see the profitability numbers or your gross revenue numbers, how much quarterly you have done, but there were three important metrics which CFO or the CEO at LinkedIn used to look were mostly driven on the customer side of things, and which only could have been possible if there was a digitization to collect that data and do the number crunching and provide those kind of details to the CEO. So I think we are seeing a lot of shift from what traditional reporting was and what it looks like for the future. And it's totally getting dependent on digitization, and it's totally getting dependent on how we are running the business. Like, Nitin was talking about malls. There'll be a time, and I'm sure Nitin we can share more experience on this, is how much data mall is collecting, like what kind of shopping people are doing, and which retailers are doing well, and what is the footfall, etc. So these are very important data for any retailer. Just to give you an example, there are two retailers in US, which is Target and Lowe's. So actually, Lowe's and Target, they were putting data science as to what kind of people they should hire. It was very unknown to us 5 years or 6 years back that you can put data science to decide what kind of people to hire, even in the finance team. And then they saw that more technological savvy people and people who have some data science skills are being hired more and more by these retailers, and even in their finance function to do those kind of data science and number crunching from them. And another example I would like to quote is one of the largest online platform we all know is Amazon. Where they have devised two things which are very unique, and it only comes when you digitize based on the organizational goals and based on the nature of the business and how the business is evolving. When Amazon started, it was all prepaid business in US. But when it went into economies like India and other emerging markets, where they see that there is huge demand for cash on delivery, because so many people were not bankable 10 years back or 5 years back, but they still wanted to order online. So they have to have those cash on delivery. Now, but there was a lot of fraud. There was a lot of things which was happening, and Amazon wanted to curtail, and they could only curtail it by just downloading a data based on the PIN code. And they started restricting cash on deliveries based on certain PIN codes. So, these are some of the examples which the data collects, and the finance function can use it if they only understand the business, and if they only understand the overall organizational goal. Then only they will be able to decide how much to digitize and what to digitize. We all run about bots, and we all get very excited when we see all these bots and hear about AI and ML. But I think the only organization who have been successfully able to implement or get the most use out of these are the ones who actually develop them or procure them based on their study. So, I think the first step in terms of digitization is to study and tailor-made it for each of the organization. We all know that, data is the new oil, and we have to harness and keep it safe. We keep on hearing that a lot. And I think I would, just go back to Deepak when he was mentioning about warranty accounting. When in my GE days 10 years back, warranty accounting was a big mess, because you have to collect so much information and do the manual stuff. But now warranty accounting has so much evolved. When I was with Greenlight, we implemented the warranty accounting by just collecting the returns data, the failure data of the product. And it starts right from the manufacturing piece that what is your failure rates, going all the way up to the customer feedback. So it has to be an end-to-end channel based on what products you are setting up for, whether it is you're setting up for a manufacturing, whether it is a financial services. Now, I work for a financial services company now, and I'll just quote the last example as to how we are dealing with data and digitization is, we do partner with a software agency who are collecting data on the repayment rates of certain companies who are distributing solar lanterns on a financing basis. Now we are able to devise an automated underwriting technology with that data, which gives us predictive analysis of the companies as to how they are performing and how they will perform based on their historical trends. And our underwriting has been, the manual effort on the underwriting has reduced substantially. And and that fund is actually scaling up the most because, it's fueled by data. Automation is there. We have predictive analysis and a lot of information which is coming from the real source, what's actually happening on the ground. So I think the best data, which is the data, rather than us sitting in offices and finding what's going to happen, is to look at what's actually happening. So, with that, I would like to hand it back to Hemant, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Nitin. We are now running a little short of time. So, as much as I would have loved to carry on, we'll have a short rapid fire question, and I would really appreciate if you all could keep your answers in less than half a minute, because we are a little tight on time. So my first question would be to Amitesh. Amitesh, what do you think should be the right balance of what to digitize and what not to digitize? Amitesh, you are on mute.
I'm so sorry. I'll keep it quick, Hemant. I think the best way to understand what and how much to digitize is, go back on the drawing board and jot down your processes and your customers and do a kind of an objective coding to them and come up with a value objective for each of those criteria or each of these objectives, and kind of also look at what resources you have, both from a monetary budgetary perspective and also from an implementation perspective. Because, the biggest challenge for any implementation has been a change management, not only with the finance team, but especially with the cross-functional teams, which becomes even more challenging. So I think finding and targeting and prioritizing based on the requirements, which can be filtered again from an internal and external customer point of view, And I think then categorizing them and implementing would be the best way for any digitization.
Thank you, Amitesh. Ramnik, let me come to you. What do you think should be the skills required of a champion who's going to lead the technology process in a company?
So I will say, so first of all, whenever you want to lead all these changes and transformation, so now empathy is very, very important for him, because this is when the transition happens, from, the way we do the things, not only us, but down the line, the teams, as well as a cross-functional team. So see, you have to take everything on the board. So now everybody has to be on the board, because if you will put best of the technology, but if your people and the processes are not aligned, because I will say it's a mixture of three things, because we normally misconcept about, whenever we do any evaluation for, rollout of technology, people comes about straightforward calculating the ROI, so that is what the problem which started, which I've seen in my career also, that so whenever you want to go for any transformation, you always, because your CEO, maybe your management or top management, always ask you to calculate the ROI. So this is what I feel, see, that whenever the champion want to do any transformation, yes, it is important, because when we are doing any transformation, the ROI should be there, but it should be, planned in such a way. So because each transformation has its stage, it can't be achieved in one shot, right? So I will say it's like, the hen which is laying, golden eggs, and you want to, achieve all the golden eggs on the first day. So that is a mistake normally we do it. So my only suggestion that whenever the technology champion want to do any transformation, it should be rolled out in such a way so that all the teams, the down the line, the team, cross-functional team should be on the board, and it should be done in the stages. And then we should achieve what we want to achieve from that transformation, because we should get ourselves ready for the future, because the future is moving to that direction, and we are, in the VUCA world. So we have to prepare ourselves. But this is what I say, he has to be, very, very critical in terms of empathy, and as well as planning things then. So that is more important skill. Other thing, he can buy everything in terms of technology and everything that can be there.
Thank you, Ramnik. My penultimate question, let me come to Nitin. Nitin, what do you think are the skill sets that the future finance hires of the world you will be looking for in them to take them on board?
So one is of course the technology mindset. Second, I would say I will not be so even now when we are looking for shared service, we are not looking for chartered accountants, or we are looking for somebody who has attitude and somebody who is very positive about it. There are certain skills which can be learned. So for shared service transactions, we are still not looking for basic chartered accountants. I think wherever you need a particular skill set, you need somebody who's an expert in taxation, need expert in accounting. There only we are going for specific chartered accountants. I think the future of finance, as everybody rightly said, it has evolved. One, I remember, we were used to call watchdogs. Then we were called business partners. Now I think we are moving towards a state where we are working along with the business. And as Amitesh rightly said, that the customer experience is important. So it's not only the CEO who has to look about the customer experience. Everybody in finance organization also has to start looking at the customer experience. So for customer, it's not only the external customer, but the internal customer experience as well. So one, I would say positive attitude, skill set still can be developed. Second, technology mindset. Definitely, without technology, you can't win over. And third, which I was looking at is customer first, whether it's internal, external.
Thank you, Nitin. And Deepak, lastly, could you tell us, we have spoken for the last 40 minutes on technology. How is technology stroke AI helping us in better forecasting of profits or better decision making?
So I'll give you an example. I think, it's a very, very valid question. A lot of people actually have that question comes even from the board saying that, what is the ROI effectively? And like for us in the journey, if I were to take a problem, which is like, what is the profit of a particular product or service? And what is the customer paying? Now, that is a very dynamic number, because the selling price may remain the same. However, the cost may actually change over a period of time. And if the program life is, let's say, for 5 years, because we actually deal in auto components, mostly the program life is 5 years. And we have seen the cost actually changing over a period of time without really understanding. So to answer you very simply, now I have an analytics, which is a dashboard, and I can actually see how the selling price and how the cost has moved. If the cost has moved, which of the cost elements have actually moved? And if the cost element has moved, what is the reason? Is that because of just inflation, which we should have done a good job in terms of negotiation? Or it is like, certain things which were, we should actually go back to the customer and really seek for price increases. So, that kind of data analytics, which is very, very available. As far as the forecasting is concerned, based on the logics and the experiences, because it's a very dynamic situation, most of the businesses these days are very dynamic. And based on the predictability of how we have basically done it, so, whether it is inventory, whether it is, any expenses and things like that, the analytics actually, or the MLs or data actually basis actually throw up some of the results. Now you can always overrule that. And for all the material planning or profit planning and things like that, but many a times it actually works. You do not have to really engage somebody to get that answer. Once the data is there, you can actually do some data crunching on your own and then come with the answer, which is very, very logical and much more accurate and realistic, based on what you are seeing the situation as a CFO. So it has actually tremendously helped us over a period of time. I would say all the investments which we have done in technology, we are actually more than paid off, over a period of, I would say, around 3 to 4 years is what my experience is in most of the companies which I have worked for.
Okay, thank you, Deepak. While we all would have loved to share more of our experiences, but we obviously have a time constraint. So I would like to thank Exito for hosting us, my fellow panelists for sharing the experiences, and the audience, for hopefully we would have left you at least with one thought to ponder over. Thank you so much. Over to you, Anisha.